Welcome back to Steve Robb Reviews, and welcome back to part 2 of my solar project. I'm installing 200 watt of solar power, 2 single 100 watt panels on the side of my cabin up in Northern Ontario. And I thought I'd bring you through the process of where I actually get the idea from, what I'm using, and how it all goes together. If you haven't seen part 1, I'll put a link down below in the description box. Let's go over to the bench here. Let's take a look and see what I got. Okay, so this is what I've got so far. I'm going to start off at this end right here, and this is just a very simple box. As you can see here, there's a hole on that side, there's a hole on this side. So the way I'm planning it is the wires that come from the 2 solar panels are going to feed in here. The 2 wires that come out and go to the control panel are going to come from here, and I've got lots of room to put some strain retention clips in, room to fasten it down. I'll drill the holes when I get up there, and I just leave a couple of mark connectors in there so that I can attach them all together. Now this is the control panel. I'm going to describe how it all went together, and then we're going to test it, because the last thing I want to do is go up there and find out that the ammeter doesn't work. So we're going to check that all out, and I'll show you how this is all put together. So let me straighten this out and get a good camera shot so I can explain all this and how it went together. Well, here we go. We'll start off with the charge controller. I drew some lines on here because sometimes it can be a little confusing with all the wires coming out, but these 2 connectors here, these 2 wires, a positive and a negative, well, they go into where it's marked as battery. These 2 are solar panel. I got them 2 wires. Now, as you can see, the leads go up to a couple of fuses. You should really fuse everything that has power going through it. So I fuse them, and as you can see here, to battery bank fuse 15 amp, to solar panel fuse 15 amp. Now these particular labels, you never know how long they're going to stay on there, right? So I like to screw them on so that you can see this one here is starting to separate a little bit already. So that way there they stay on forever, so somebody else is looking at this panel, they could figure it out. Now the way that, as far as I could figure out, the charge controllers actually work is the battery itself. So these are the 2 lines that will be going down to the battery, and everything in here is going to be a minimum of 14 gauge wire. Some will be solid wire like household wire, and some will be braided like this one here, like automotive wire, because these are fuses. And the way I understand it is a little bit different than conventional type of hookups if you're actually running a meter through something. I think this is an ammeter here. Okay, so the way this actually works is the feed going in. This would be the feed going in, a positive and negative from the solar panel. Goes into the charge controller, goes through computer chips to regulate the voltage, and then comes out these 2 leads down to your battery bank. It doesn't go the opposite direction. So when you're looking at your ammeter, it's going from the solar panel through the fuse into here down to your battery bank itself. Now these 2 here are just for auxiliary, whatever you want to put on here. You can put a light, you can put it whatever you want, and these are 2 USBs. Now I don't use the USBs, but on my solar panel setup up at my camp, I use these 2 outlets here to run my cell phone signal booster, and I picked these 2 right here, and I never had no problems. Now this is all adjustable. You can adjust the voltages on the system, or you could have this on or off. So I'm going to have this just off because I'm not using this port here. So here's the 2 fuses here, 15 amp, and this is what it looks like before. Now all I did was look at the square here, and I looked at the depth, and all I did was get my roto-zip tool and cut out a couple of slots in here, and then underneath in the wood what I did was drill a hole through the wood about 3/16. And then what I do is I fill the whole cavity with hot glue, and then when I press it in, not all the glue comes over the sides because you kind of hydrolock it in there if you try to do that, right? So you have a little hole in the wood on the bottom, so when I press it through, well, the glue will squirt down. So that's the idea behind that. So I screw everything on to make sure nothing falls apart, right? And I label everything. Now let's go on the other side now that you have an idea of what's going on, and anybody in the future could look at this and figure out what's going on. So I'll show you the other side. Okay, so I got you pretty well zoomed in there, and if we just take a look at the back of the ammeter, the only one that they did show was a little negative here, so I just put some marker negative and a little bit of red for the positive. Now when you're taking a look at, this is the feed wire from the fuse that comes out, and that is going to actually go right here, and then this one here will go here. Now this one here goes over to this post over here, and so these are directional. Your ammeter is directional. So I mean, if your pointer starts going the opposite direction, you know you got to reverse your cables. But you can see where I've got solar panel positive wire. Okay, so this is the fuse that comes from the solar panel. Now I already got the connector sitting here on the bottom, just screwed into the block here, the junction blocks, and so all I have to do is just attach it to here, and the negative to the solar panel will attach right here. Now that's as simple as it can get, right? So this wire here, the negative goes to the charge controller, and this one here is for the negative for the battery, goes to the charge controller, and this one here is the positive that goes through the ammeter and then comes out here. So when I go up there, all I have to do is connect 4 connections, and I'm done. This is ready to go. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to test the ammeter and see how accurate it is, and make sure that it actually works. So let's do that next, and just take a quick second to show you the idea that you really should test everything before you bring it up so that it actually does work. Okay, so there's the 2 connections I put on the back of the ammeter. So we're in series, and we're going through the ammeter, and as you can see, there's a light on. So I've got a small little 12-volt light going on there, and what do we see here? Looks right around 2 amps, maybe a little bit more, and 2.1 on the Fluke 287, 2.15, and on my power supply 2.1 amps. So I would say this is pretty well spot on. I think that'll work out terrific. So let me just show you how this box was built, and then I'll show you some of the other stuff that you need to know to actually, well, get yourself up and running when you're hooking up a pair of solar panels. Okay, so I've attached the wires, and you can see it right there. Now, there's a little bit of thought goes into just making a box. So, I mean, I've got one hole there and one hole there, and all you do is you just close this down, and then you just got a little bit of a screw just to tighten it all down. Now the good part about this is, now you have to imagine now when you're doing something. So this is going to be on a block wall, right? And it's going to be in this position. So when I'm working on this, I have to be able to mount this on the wall, and then when I open it up, it's going to hang like this and stay open. And that's the whole idea of putting this hinge down here. Just one hinge, that's all you need. So that when you're working on it, well, you don't have any problems, right? So, that's the way it's going to be mounted on the wall. And then on the sides here, you'll see this is going to be where the battery out cables will come, and they'll go to my battery bank. And on this side is going to be where I'm going to have the two cables come in from the solar panel. I'll bring them down here. I'll put some nice clamps on here so the wire can't move, and they'll feed in there. And then after I'm finished, I always put a little bit of silicone on all the wires as they go in. So it's just a really simple box. And at the back here, I just marked, 5 inches from center of the hole to the other side of the other hole, so I can just drill the 2 holes first and then mount the box easily. I mean, now if you're wondering what these little pads are, well, if you put this is a pine, if you put pine box on a concrete wall, well, it won't be long before it starts rotting, because you get condensation on here and it rots out the wood. So I mean, I'm not painting or staining this or anything. You could if you wanted to, but that's the reason why I put the 4 little pads there. So let's go over to these 2 connectors. Now these 2 connectors, one is a male and one is a female. You could see how the connection points are different on each one, right? And so when you have 2 solar panels, the connectors are on them are all universal. So I'll have 2 negative cables go into here, and it comes out as a 1. Then 2 positive cables come out here as in a 1. And then I've got other connectors that I have to make up that just snap into here. So all I have to do is just plug and play. I snap it into here, and then I put it in the side of the box inside and attach it to the connectors on the back of the panel. And it's as easy as that. So inside the box, I'll just leave this here. And that's the concrete bits, the concrete drill bit, the 2 fasteners, and the installer, and the instructions for the solar panel, right? And I'll just leave that right in the box so that when I get up there, it's easy to do. So the solar panel connectors, well, I'll attach them to each side, and then I'll test them like I did in part 1 to make sure, well, that the connectors are working, right? The last thing I want to do is get up there and find out these things don't work, and so it's better to test it than being stuck up there. So there's a couple of more things that I have to do, and there's a couple of things that I do that more likely going to be different than what most other people do when they're hooking up their solar panel system. I'm using 14-2 household wiring. Now 14-2 is good for 15 amps, and AC amps, DC amps, makes no difference. It's copper wire, right? I'm using solid copper wire from inside the loft all the way to the control panel. And of course I'll be using flexible braided like automotive wire to go from the control panel down to my battery bank, and just screw the eyelets right on, the positive and the negative, and I'm good. But the reason why I'm doing this is, well, twofold. First thing is, I already have a 400 watt solar panel up there, 4 100 watts, so I got 400 watts altogether. And I can't add to that because I've only got enough wiring there, the maximum of 30 amps, and I'll be over 30 amps if I put 600 watts on there. So another reason is, well, the solar panels are facing exactly due south. My cabin, on the end of the cabin where I'm mounting the solar panels, is exactly west. So in the morning when the sun comes up, well, it comes up and it shades the panel till about, the solar panels, the 400 watt array, shades them till about 9 o'clock in the morning, and then around 10 o'clock, between 10 and 10:30, starts shining on the panel. Then by noon, it's directly right facing the panel, and then by around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, now the side of the panel is starting to shade towards the end of the cabin. And that's where I'm going to mount the 2 solar panels, because I pretty much lose a lot of my peak amperage around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. But starting around 1 o'clock, the side of the cabin where I'm going to mount the solar panels, it's got full sun for the rest of the day. So that is giving me the opportunity to keep the battery bank charged up a lot better, because I got a fridge running up there 24/7, and it allows me to actually provide more power during the peak sunlight hours than just relying on the 400 watt array that kind of loses most of its peak amperage around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So from 3 o'clock up until about maybe 8:30 in the summertime, 9 o'clock, well, I'm only putting out maybe 2 amps, where the one on the end of the loft there that I'm going to put on there, well, that'll be a maximum of 10 amps. We'll see how many amps I get out of it. We're going to show this all next summer and the connections. But the next thing I have to do is I can't put these solar panels on the outside of the cabin where I have a door going, an existing door like I showed in part 1, and not have no way of getting in there. So, like I said before, last summer, well, I got to actually mount a new door on the other end of the cabin. And I'm going to show me doing that next. So stay tuned for that. I hope you'll find it interesting. I'm not going to use any wood at all. It's all going to be maintenance-free material. I'm using PVC, and you may find that interesting too. So stay tuned for that, and thanks for joining me on this little bit of a series on the solar install. I'll be showing so much more next summer, the complete, how it all went together. And for people that are just beginners at this, it can be quite daunting for a lot of people to try and figure it all out. And this gives you a little bit of an insight of what I do. So thanks for joining me here today. Come back again. If you haven't seen this channel before, you're welcome to subscribe and see more interesting projects like this that you might not see nowhere else. Cheers.